After Jesus was born, it said God came to him in a dream and said, Herod's going to come kill the baby. And it says Joseph got up in the middle of the night, left everything, and went to Egypt. Joseph is like, honey, we're going. And I was thinking to myself, man, that's like immediate costly obedience. Leave all your stuff, go to a country that you don't speak the language. And I want to be obedient like that, you know, as opposed to Saul, who just is always justifying.
Welcome to the Revolve Recap weekly podcast where we help the people of Revolve, that's you guys, connect to God, connect to God's family, connect to God's mission. And we keep you in the loop. The behind the scenes, the BTS, that's what the kids call it on TikTok.
Is that what they call it?
Hashtag BTS, behind the scenes. Yep.
TikTok.
That's what we're giving you, a behind the scenes look. And today, we are going to be talking about First Samuel.
Yeah, First Samuel
chapter 15. Yesterday was a great service. I have to confess. You ever have one of those mornings, Billy, where before the church service, your family's just falling apart? I mean, I know you as a pastor, probably everything's just perfect.
Yeah, that's it.
Your kids are up. They're putting their church shoes on.
Yep.
We love you, Daddy.
Just praying.
Gina's just like making a good hearty breakfast for everybody.
That's it.
She's playing the piano.
Mm-hmm. Singing hymns.
Yep. So we didn't have one of those mornings, but you know what? I'm going to, without going into too many gory details, I am thankful for a church family and a church body that come alongside and help. And there was a handful of people at the church that gave us a good hand.
Like they applauded you?
They were like, you made it. Good job. We thought you were going to just blow it, but you didn't.
You didn't. You did it, David.
No, Corey was just struggling a little bit, and
I hope he doesn't watch this podcast.
He doesn't. He's not allowed to watch YouTube anymore. So, nope, he can't.
YouTube. The irony.
Right?
The irony that he can't watch it, and we are literally Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
We are literally.
Yep.
Dave was just saying he started Parks and Rec. That's a Parks and Rec reference.
I know.
The one guy
Rob
was
Lowe.
literally.
Literally.
We are literally YouTube stars.
YouTube stars. Wow. We're big in Germany.
Yeah. That's what we do, guys. We connect up, we connect in, we connect out. This is
David McCumber.
And I am.
Oh, we didn't even do the intro. Billy Lackey.
I'm Billy Lackey.
Billy, the brains, the beauty, the body. All of them. Bahama Billy.
Bayou Billy. They call me Bayou Billy.
Yep.
Shoot them gators.
So,
guys, we have no notes. No notes.
If that's not obvious, we don't have any notes.
No, you see, and it makes David nervous. It doesn't make me nervous.
No.
They don't call me nervous Billy. They call me
Cool Hand Billy.
Cool Hand Billy. Luke.
Cool Hand Lackey.
Cool Hand Luke Lackey. My mom almost named me Luke.
Really?
And then I could have been Cool Hand Luke Lackey.
Luca Lackey.
Luke Lackey doesn't really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, we're going to try this without notes today. We want to be a little more conversational. We're still going to have the same flow, though.
Yeah.
And so I want to begin with an intro question. You guys, if you listened last week, we talked about this idea of how do you make big decisions, right? And so at the beginning of that, we kind of threw a big decision off the cuff. We were like, hey, what's a big decision that you might have to make? And we talked about how you navigate that. Well, I would like to know, David, if you're willing to share.
Sure.
What was the decision you came to? Because we don't just talk here. Talk is cheap.
Talk is cheap.
We act.
Yeah.
And so what was you had your big decision. Give a little quick summary of it.
A little less conversation, a little more action.
That's it.
It's Elvis.
It's just like Elvis.
Yep.
A different action than Elvis.
So last week I talked about, I don't know how much, did I talk about the school, right? For the kids who learn to read good?
And who want to do other stuff good too.
Yep. No, so was looking at possibly starting some sort of like arts kids academy / gallery studio space.
/ ball pit.
Yep. Ball. Bounce house.
All the above.
Yep.
Cigar shop.
All those things. So wine tasting.
All of those
things. Just drop your kids off.
Private school.
Yep. And I was kind of not stressing about it, but definitely in my own head, kind of chasing around like, oh, should I do it? Should I not do it? And we talked about kind of come up with a plan. I made a list of basically all the expenses, all the classes, just all the needs, and just made a list. And Melissa and I prayed about it. And what we would do is we pray about it in the morning, talk about it for a little bit, and then that's it. It wouldn't be at like 3:00 or at dinner. We just give it to the Lord and not bring it up anymore. And then I had a phone call with a friend on Thursday who's a business type guy who knows kind of the right questions to ask. He gave me a couple questions to ask, and once I sat down and...
What kinds of questions for those of us who aren't as astute in the business world?
Well, they're really obvious, and I kind of feel foolish.
Can it make money?
Yeah, that was basically...
Can you afford it?
He was like how many classes would you have to teach
to turn a profit?
To turn a profit. And he goes, and then remember that, there's going to be a large portion of your time that's bookkeeping, scheduling, planning, cleanup, all these kind of extra things that I wasn't really thinking of.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh yeah, I can do 9 classes a day. And it's like, no,
if you want to work 14 hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
So realistically, once he sat that down and, we wrote out some numbers, we were like, what, this just financially isn't going to happen. And it was like a blow for, I don't know, a couple hours where I was like, man, I really wanted to do that. I'm kind of bummed out. And I've kind of maybe thought that a couple times since then, but I would say, 90% of the time I'm like, God gave me a clear answer. I'm not going to stress about it.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Well, that's good. I'm glad the Lord gave you wisdom. David identified something. He sought for wisdom. He asked God and he acted. Right. Yep. And that's kind of what we talked about last week. So for me, if you remember, my big thing was saying like, should I start doing like TikTok and these kinds of ideas?
Which I'm going to pause you there, right there. Imagine you're
TikTok,
a 40-year-old grown man with a master's degree going to get his doctorate, going to his father and going, Dad, thinking about starting a TikTok.
The old TikTok? It's for bad breath, ain't it?
Yeah.
So I also prayed and decided not to. Mm-hmm. And because I didn't want Dave to be the only one who got a no. No, I didn't. No, I decided not to for a few reasons.
He went to his dad.
I went to my dad. My dad made fun of me. No, the big thing for me was realizing that I don't want to be a hypocrite with my kids. That like I say to my kids things like, I don't want you on things like TikTok or Instagram or these ideas, and the danger of it, and then feeling like I would be a hypocrite. I'd be like, listen to my words, not my actions. Yeah. And how God just reminded me, be faithful with what's right in front of you. Don't worry about what's not in front of you. Shepherd the flock that's in front of you. I remember years ago someone said where pastors are always worrying about shepherding the flock they don't have instead of shepherding the flock they do have. Nice. And so I was like, it's not the right time and not the right venue. And I'm just going to keep on keeping on, trucking on, doing that thing.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Good. That's what I always say.
That's what you do always say. You got those shirts printed with it on them.
Keep on trucking on, moving on, doing that thing.
We got a bunch of 3XLs and extra smalls left over, though. So just as a recap, what's that decision making? So you have I
don't have my notes in front of me, but it was basically like identify a problem, ask, see what the scripture says about it, ask God for wisdom, pray on it, and act. Yeah. Because you're not a double-minded man. When God gives you wisdom, you're acting on it.
Nope, we don't want to be like Saul.
No, we don't.
Man, Saul. Has Saul done anything right so far in 15, probably 12 chapters?
Saul, have you done? I mean, that one chapter, like 10 or 11, he did win that battle when Bretton preached. Yeah. Oh, so you were on vacation.
I wasn't here. Yeah.
Or you were
I wasn't on vacation.
You were at a retreat.
I was at a men's retreat. Forged in Fire is what it was called.
Yep, Mom.
Thank you.
Some of us don't need to go to retreats to become men.
Speaking of which, there's a men's retreat that Bill and I will be teaching at.
Oh, crap. Dug my own hole.
Yep. So, but no, we will be having a men's retreat for those men at Revolve, second week of June. I think it's
For all of you who don't go to Revolve and you listen, I know you want to come.
Yeah, there's only 25 spots.
It was only 25 listeners on YouTube, so we're good.
Yep. All the mosquitoes you can eat, though.
Oh, yeah. That's great. Yeah, so that's going to... Do you remember the dates off the top of your head?
I think it's 7th,
7th, and 8th, 7th, 8th, 9th, something like that?
It's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So Bill and I will be there Friday and Saturday, and then I think Dave Walker's going to come Sunday.
Yeah.
And if you are signed up for serve staff, you need to come as well.
To church?
To church.
Yeah.
Or Jen will fire you.
She'll fire you so fast, and we just threw that party.
Yeah, but then we'll rehire you because we need helpers.
That's true.
So what are we talking about today, Bill?
Well, we're going to look back, look up, and look forward like we always do. We're going to look back, look at the sermon yesterday, kind of summarize that, talk through what the big takeaways were, and then we'll look up what are we chewing on from that sermon or from also just life. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to look ahead, point out some announcements, maybe some action steps. I don't even know, so who knows? Maybe I'll just sketch.
That's good. That's all right.
All I have right down here is David wants me to buy him a clicky clacker.
Right? Yeah. So every time, you guys don't see this, but every time before we start filming, I have to clap with my hand really loud, and that shows me...
And then he complains. He goes, "Oh, my hands hurt, Billy."
And it's to match up the video with the microphones. Everything has to sync when I edit it. I see that spike in the hands. But if I had a clicky clacker, I just feel cool. Is that your phone or mine? Oh, that's your phone.
Should I?
Man, you don't have any notes, but you had it.
Hey, Gina, you're on with the podcast. Say hi to everybody.
Hey, Gina.
Oh, my God.
Say hi.
No.
She goes, no.
Long-time listener, first-time caller, Gina Lackey, has just hung up on us. So... Man,
I had my phone on Do Not Disturb, but I guess because she is number one
so
in my
important.
phone, it
So
blew
important.
right past the Do Not Disturb.
Yep. I better put mine on Do Not Disturb in case Gina calls me now.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh.
All right. Where were we at?
Good. Look back. Yesterday was 1 Samuel 15.
1 Samuel 15.
1 Samuel 15. Let's rebuild the passage. Couple big plot points. Big plot points. You go, I go, you go, I go, you go.
Yesterday was a rough day for me, Billy.
All right, plot point number 1 is God says to Saul, you need to go kill those Amalekites.
Yes. Okay. So now we have, and it was a tough list.
Yeah.
It was like, I want the donkeys, and you're like, okay, I kill a donkey. The men, I'll kill some men. And then it's like the babies, and you're like, yeah.
So
I don't think so. The sheep, I don't want to kill a sheep, little baby.
So, they say that when you don't know what to do with something, that's when you actually laugh. It's like your brain is stalling.
It doesn't know how to put it in it.
Doesn't know how to put it in the right bucket. It's one of those things where you're like, it says babies.
Yeah.
You're like, this isn't funny, but I don't know how to process it. So I think I'm gonna. I've been on the fence.
You're gonna laugh?
No, I think I'm gonna. But then I'm gonna talk about this topic this Sunday.
Okay.
Because I think it's like almost too heavy to just kind of push past.
Well, it is one of those topics that like you'll see on TikTok where it's like, oh, if God is love, why does he have you kill the babies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not telling you to go kill babies, just so you know. But it is. I think I'm going to talk about it. I got to talk about it.
Okay.
So this coming Sunday, we're going to talk about this idea of this judgment.
Yeah.
Hold that thought. All right. But so basically, God says, hey, you need to go kill the Amalekites. Mm-hmm. Saul's like, you got it.
You got it. I'm going to go do it. And then he goes and does it almost. And he brings back a king, kills the babies. Brings back a king.
Yep.
And a bunch of goats.
A bunch of nice animals.
Bunch of nice animals. And Samuel's like, Saul, did you do what you're supposed to do?
And he's like, heck yeah. He's like, man, I did it. I commanded. All the Lord commanded, I did.
This is totally the tricks we play on our kids.
Yeah.
Like when you know this thing and you're like,
what did you have for dinner, Eden?
Corey, what?
Chicken.
What are you watching on YouTube? Nothing?
Right.
Uh-huh. And then he goes, but I hear some sheep.
Yeah.
Here's some goats.
Some cows mooing.
Yeah.
And so obviously he didn't do it.
Yeah.
And so then God gets frustrated and he says, look, you're not going to be king anymore, Saul. You disobey me. You never do what I tell you to do. And Saul's still trying to justify himself.
Yeah.
He's got all these excuses.
Yeah. Oh, the people, they be mad at me. And then look, I got these fattened calves, and we can kill them and eat them.
Yeah.
The people.
So he blames it on people.
Total Adam and Eve thing.
Yeah, blames it on people, acting like Adam and Eve. He blames it on kind of like religion, right? He's like, oh, well, I'm going to sacrifice it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like I'm going to cheat on my taxes, but I'm going to tithe on
Yes.
the money I make.
Yes.
Help all the orphans.
That's it. Help the orphans in all the world. So we see this fear of man. We see this religiosity. And it really comes down to the fact that he just doesn't obey. And
Is this, I don't know if I'm reading ahead, but did we talk yesterday where he, where Samuel says to Saul, like, you're God's anointed king.
yes, that's like one of the key verses.
Like,
I mean,
know you don't like yourself, or I know
Yes.
but you got a job to do.
Yep.
You got to go find
The dog.
that dog.
Yeah, the
It was a
idea.
Billy Madison reference.
It
Just so
wa-
you know. That wasn't in the Bible.
No, it wasn't. But afterwards, somebody came up to me and they said, man, that was such a powerful line from Saul
yeah.
when he says, I know that you think of very little of yourself. And it's like, you think about that as a husband, as a father, as a leader, it's like, it would be like me being like, well, God, I don't know. And God goes, I know you think very little of yourself, but I've made you the pastor of Revolve.
Yeah.
And so you need to man up and you need to step up and you need to lead.
Yeah.
Or for you to be like, well, my family, blah, blah, blah. And God goes, I know you think very little of yourself and you doubt yourself, but I've made you the man of the house.
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
that kind of idea. And you're like, wow, that's a really direct rebuke.
Yeah.
And
That
I
was-
don't think we really appreciate this, like the severity of it.
You were reading that book, and then I started reading it, that Living Fearlessly book. And he talks about that a little bit
Yeah.
in that, where he says, if you knew your true identity, you would be so busy living out your purpose and worshiping God and being who God created you to be, you wouldn't have a desire to sin.
Yeah.
But because we get bored and because we want a cheap thrill,
Yep.
we go to sin.
It's such a great point.
And it's like following and being obedient to God is exciting and fulfilling enough, but
Yeah.
we don't do that.
It really is interesting because you think about it from the perspective of if God has made you a king, he's made you to lead. Not to be led by the people, which is
Yeah.
what Saul was doing. Saul says,
Yeah.
well, I fear the people. I plan to please the people. The people did this, people did that. It's like, no, he made you a king. That's your identity, and kings lead.
Yeah.
And you think about that from another side of it. It's like if God has made you, if he's gifted you as a teacher of the Bible, what does Paul say? Let those who have the gift of teaching teach, right? But if you don't have an avenue to teach, then what do? You get in fights on Twitter. You kind of like start maybe just a blog where you're just kind of like vomiting
Ranting,
out
yeah.
all your rants, right? Because you're not actually using your gifts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so then you think about whatever that looks like. Let's say that
Get a podcast.
you get a podcast. Let's say that God's made you a gifted evangelist and you're not using that gift. Then maybe you still do that same thing, but you do it for other stuff. You become a salesman. You know what I mean? You kind of like evangelize for other stuff. Tell people how great the Eagles are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
you're gonna find an overflow for your giftedness and your identity, but it might not be the path which God has actually chosen for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I kind of want to press pause.
Well,
a
we
little
have
bit.
no notes,
Let's
so let's do
lean
it.
into that a little bit. Think about areas in your life,
Okay.
you, Billy, and the listener. Where are those areas that maybe you excel? Like maybe if you're a great salesman. What's
Yeah.
he saying, Tommy Boy? You could sell
I don't remember.
a ketchup popsicle to a man in white gloves.
Yeah, that's great.
That's
Yeah.
a great line. But, maybe you would be a great evangelist.
Yeah. So
Maybe you're a great, I don't know. trying to think
Okay.
some more examples.
So
there.
we'll do like a portrait of David here.
Okay.
What is David good at?
Yeah. Well, I
You're
think
creative?
as an artist, you're creative, but as an artist, you have a message to tell.
Okay.
I mean, every artist is trying to communicate some story, some message. Yes, oh, that was a beautiful picture, but Picasso was making political statements with a lot of his work.
Yeah.
They weren't just cool cubistic paintings.
yeah.
So as an artist, I'm a communicator, so which means I like to teach. So,
And you like to encourage people. Mm-hmm. And you also said to me in the past that one of the things you like about making art is people put in their homes.
yeah.
So there's like something that's like hospitable.
Yeah, I like people to feel at home. That like comfort and safety of home is important, which would lead to being like a foster parent,
Yep.
refugee ministry, like wanting people to feel like they're have a home.
So when in your, you guys are getting like total peel behind
You're
the
like
curtain. This is like
this
how
was
we
me
normally
hitting pause and then you psychoanalyzing
No,
me.
no, no.
I wish
So
I didn't
when-
hit pause because it totally turned around on me.
Oh no! When you look at like the last 10 years of your life, can you give us like a snapshot of when you felt like in Spain we'd say you were in your sauce, estaba en tu salsa. You were in your sauce. It's like you were like, I was leveraging my giftedness for the glory of Christ. Can you think of an example?
I liked when I had my gallery in Cape May and Hannah was running the gallery and I was able to make art, but then at the same time I was able to take time to go to Greece. And
Yeah.
I think caring for the teams that were there and having like a house church setting and encouraging the teams that were doing the work that were there, I felt like that was really I really felt like this was purposeful when I was
So your job was doing two things. One, it was empowering you to go and have the flexibility to do that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were like a framer,
Yeah.
and you were working a standard 40 hours a week, you couldn't have just left.
Yeah.
Right. So your job was empowering you with that flexibility and the opportunity.
kind of making money in the summertime and be able to travel in the wintertime.
Right. And you were also able to go and use your gifts with people and then also use your art at the same time to communicate what the Lord was showing you.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. And so the idea is that it would be like if David was like, wait.
No, I was thinking of our friend Nick, who's a great salesman.
Yeah.
Didn't he like really thrive at Seed Week with like street
Yeah,
evangelism?
he liked it. Yeah, a lot. And same thing with Brian Pittman and guys like that.
Who's a great salesman.
Yep.
And then, but street evangelizing, he also thrived in.
Yeah, it doesn't
Whereas,
make
like,
him
that, like,
uncomfortable.
that makes me really uncomfortable. But like inviting a stranger into my house doesn't make me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So that's funny.
So this is who God made you to be. And so you go back to that idea of Paul,
Saul.
in Rome. No, Paul in Romans saying, let those who are leaders lead, let those who are servants serve, let those who are, creative artists be creative and make art and proclaim. And this makes us, we're made in the image of God. So when we do these things, we're living out our vocational calling. There was like, what's the term for it? There's a term for it actually, but it's this idea of, it's this idea of your vocational footprint and the way that God has uniquely made you. You know what I mean?
Well, and you think of you as a teacher, you're that's what you're passionate about. And you're always looking for various options or avenues to teach. So even thinking of like TikTok, it's like, this is another way I can teach. This is another way I can share the gospel. This is another way I can train people.
But
it's like
before I was a pastor, I had a YouTube channel where I taught about bushcraft.
Yeah.
And it's like,
So it's still teaching.
It was still teaching. But then once I started actually doing ministry, like I didn't care about that anymore.
Yeah. And when you taught Seth how to sharpen a knife, he still does it
exactly
the
what I
exact same
thought.
way you taught him to do it, because
That's
you were
funny.
like taught him in such a way that was really impactful. So it's like that's your gifting as a teacher.
So what's your thing, guys? So Saul was king, and God's like, I made you king.
So lead.
Why aren't you leading?
Yeah.
You know, he could say, hey, Bill, I've made you a teacher. Why aren't you teaching people about me? He could say to David, I've made you this creative communicator, right? Why aren't you using it the way that you could? And so what is your thing? Like maybe God has made you like someone who's really service oriented. Are you serving anyone? Has God made you a teacher and you're so exhausted from homeschooling your kids that you're not actually teaching anyone anything spiritual? You know, that kind of idea. Like if God has wired you in a certain way, you're not going to feel fulfilled if you're not using your gifts, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the lessons that we can take from Saul.
Yeah. I didn't even think about, you think about like No Limits, like those kids, and a lot of them, it's like you're being taught to fight. You're being taught to be tough, to be strong. And it's like, not all of those kids are going to become professional boxers.
Yeah.
But it's like kids that are aggressive, kids that fight, kids that don't give up, kids that are competitive. They could be, in the Coast Guard as like a rescue swimmer or something like that. And it's like, or you think of like some of our friends that are doing like sketchy things in the Middle East. It's like, well, they were incarcerated for running drugs,
Right. They were doing gnarly stuff, and now they've
and
leveraged
now
it
it's
for
like,
Christ.
oh, now I have this wisdom of like how to kind of manipulate the system a little bit. It's funny.
So this is like a major flaw in Saul's life, his insecurity. And this insecurity then feeds these other issues of why he doesn't obey God, right? And
So let me just hit pause real quick.
two pauses in one episode.
This doesn't necessarily. Well, I don't want people to get confused.
Yeah.
That they have to be in full-time ministry
No,
to
no,
use. That's not what we're saying. Like you could have the gift of teaching. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a pastor.
It doesn't mean that, but I would say this: if you have the gift of teaching, you might get home from Friday after you've been teaching math for a week, and you might be like, I hate my life.
Yeah.
Maybe love your life, right? I mean, maybe you love your job, but some of you, I would say you probably are like, I hate doing this. It's not because you hate teaching.
Yeah.
It's because you have to figure out how to find purpose in the teaching that you have. You know what I mean? Whether that's, also teaching in another avenue, like also teaching, something that has meaning and purpose beyond math, or whether it means leveraging your classroom to help mold these kids and not just, kind of check the boxes to get through your day, that kind of idea.
Yeah. Yeah. You're looking at it as, there's a higher purpose than just math.
Yeah. Right. Right. Even though math is great.
Yeah. And I think there's a guy that I've been discipling who's a teacher who is starting to realize that. Like he's like, I'm realizing that some of these kids don't have a father figure in their life. So even though I'm quote unquote just a second grade teacher, just a third grade teacher, I have an impact in these kids' life. So it makes you okay?
Yeah. My allergies, man, they're kicking.
Yeah. Maybe you should have some notes. Maybe if you had notes. Take allergy medicine before podcasting.
Sorry, guys.
All right, so let's get back to Saul. Sorry, I just wanted to hit pause.
No, I think that's good. Good. So Saul is insecure in his identity, and because he's insecure in his identity, I think what he does is he has these two things. We talked about this yesterday. One is he fears other people because he's not confident, and the other thing is he constantly questions God and then talks himself out of obedience. And so with the idea of he's afraid of the people, if he was confident in who he was, then he wouldn't be afraid of the people.
Yeah.
Because if he was like, I'm the king. Who cares what that guy thinks of me? Who cares what Joe over there thinks of me? I'm the king of Israel. Like that guy, he literally is a stable boy.
Yeah.
But instead he's like, well, what does Joe think? That kind of idea.
So I went one time, this is a funny story. I went to this dinner, big swanky dinner, like Avalon type dinner, as a fundraiser for the AJ Muirwald ship.
Okay.
And they had me paint a commissioned painting for the AJ Mirwald, and then they were going to auction it off as like a fundraiser.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was a dress-up thing, catered, the whole thing. And they said, we're going to give you a whole table. We need you to invite some business owners.
Yeah.
So I invite Nick and Maggie, Mickey and Kate, and we have a table. And they bring my painting up to start auctioning it off.
Yeah.
And no one bid on it. Like, they were hoping to get like a couple $1,000s for it. It didn't even get $0. And Mickey was laughing and Nick were laughing so hard at me because I'm in this room
Nick and
with
Mickey,
all these
that's a party foul.
with all these people. And I remember Kate going, "You're a child of the king, David. Just remember, you're a child of the king." And I just was like burying my head because the auctioneer's like, can we get 800? Can we get 800? Well, let's start. We'll start at 600. Can we get 600? No one bid on the painting. It was the most embarrassing I've ever been as an artist. And I just remember my friends who I invited.
Should have
as
invited me.
guests.
I would have bought it for $25.
I know. Well, you weren't a business owner.
Uh-huh.
You know, just a pastor. Bummer.
Why didn't it sell?
I don't know. I don't know if maybe the dinner was so expensive to get into that, you know,
Did
people
other stuff sell?
Yeah, but it was like a vacation in the Poconos, and people were like, "Yeah, I'm buying that." But they just didn't want a painting of the AJ Mirwald.
Oh my goodness!
But it was so embarrassing, and I just remember Kate being like, "You're a child of the king, David."
I could just picture Kate doing that too.
And then Mickey just laughing his head off. Mm-hmm. I felt so small. But I don't need to think I'm a child of the king. I don't need to think what those
Whatever helps you sleep at night.
hoity-toity people think of me.
Whoa, that's great. So that's a real life example of the fact that these things do come up and you need to talk yourself out of that.
Yeah.
You know, I think about as like a dad, you know, or a husband, that sometimes you might feel paralyzed in making a decision and you need to remind yourself, God has placed me as the head of this family and I have to make a decision, right?
Yeah.
That kind of idea.
These
or
little
as a
jerks
pastor.
better listen to me.
Bam, right? And so, yes. So don't be afraid of the people. Walk out your identity. Fear and identity, they kind of are at opposition. You know, if you actually know who you are, and that's the premise of that Jamie Winship book David was talking about, Living Fearless. If you know who you are, then nothing can conquer you. Nothing can overwhelm you with fear.
Yep.
But then there's also this idea with Saul where he thinks that he knows better than God.
Yeah.
He's
Which is just
like 2024
the
on the
story
nose.
as old as time.
Yeah.
Literally.
You think about that. That's exactly what's going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the woke nonsense that we see around our world
Yeah.
has to do with people thinking they know more than God.
Yeah.
You know, if I hear one more person say, you can change your gender and look, we're trusting in the science. And you're like, what are you talking about, the science? Like, there's no science related to this conversation. You're just telling God he's wrong.
Yeah.
Like in Germany, I just read last week, they said in Germany now you can choose your child's gender at birth.
Yeah.
Like, how are you want to raise little Johnny?
Or Janie.
Little Jonathania.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How are you going to raise it?
Germans aren't known for great ideas, though.
No, that's true. And so you think about that stuff and you said, this is God tells you something and we just say, no, I think I know a better way.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like sometimes I get so frustrated at my kids because, you know, you do this. You're like, no, you shouldn't drink a
Drano.
2-liter bottle of soda before bed.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And then but I'll do this
Same thing.
I'll do the same thing where I'm like saying to God that I know better. And,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
Let's do this. Let's take a pause.
okay.
And then we'll kind of look up and we'll maybe talk about some of that stuff personally of those things. Approval idolatry, identity issues, just thinking I know better than God. Which one resonates with you, David, and with me the most?
Okay.
All right? Well, let those who teach, teach.
Let those who are creative spill their soda.
All over themselves. All right, guys. So, yeah, let's talk about...
What are we talking about?
We're talking about which of Saul's struggles do you feel like you are currently at this stage in life, because I think it changes, like resonating with the most. Identity issues, fear of people or just thinking you know better than God?
I think for me personally right now is probably identity issues and approval of people. I think for me, like identity issues, I don't want to say I'm having a midlife crisis, but I think it's like, and I talk to a lot of my friends that are like this age, you kind of are like, am I doing what God wants me to do? Like, is this what I should be doing for the rest of my life? And it's like your kids are starting to get older and you're like, you know, in 6 or 7 years, like Corey's gonna be moving out. Like, am I doing everything right? So I think that's a little bit of an identity thing with me. I think like when you're 20 and your 30s, you're just kind of like, I'm just doing whatever. It doesn't matter. God will work it out, you know. But then once you hit like 40, you're like, I really want to have purpose.
Yep.
I want these last 30 or 40 years to really count for something.
Yes,
And so I think that identity is like, if I'm supposed to be a teacher, I want to teach. You know, if I'm supposed to be an evangelist, I want to be evangelizing. So
well, and I think that it's something that made me think about this the other day, because you know there's Eddie Payone's DG is setting up the
men's retreat.
And Eddie was like, you know, this is the easy part. The hard part is coming up with the content. And we were joking about it the other day because it's like,
he said the planning was the easy part.
The planning is the easy part. The hard part's coming with the content. And we were joking about it. We're like, the content's the easy part. The planning is the part that nobody wants to do.
Yeah.
And it's like when you're doing what God made you to do, it's rewarding, it's effortless, these kinds of ideas. Well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, and I think about Gene and I have been, maybe we all going through midlife crisis. Because Gene and I have been having the exact same conversation because we've been talking about all these young guys like Caden and, you know, how he's doing his little gap year and Tucker doing his gap thing and Drew Fiorucci and these guys. And Gina said to me the other day, she's like, man, I feel like, to be young and like no responsibilities. You know, they're not married, they don't have kids, they don't have jobs that they have to like worry about that they're going to lose, you know, this kind of stuff. And it's like, it just sounds really liberating. And it's that whole idea of like youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like now that we're in our 40s, you know, I'm going to be 43 this summer, you know, and you start stepping back and you start saying like, what do I want to do for the next 20 years, 30 years of my life? Yeah. And it's really easy to kind of look back at your life and be like, oh man, like, was that a wrong turn? Was that a wrong turn?
Yeah.
Was that a wrong turn? And I think that's why Paul says in Philippians, one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind, I push forward to what lies ahead, you know, the upward call of Christ Jesus. And I think that it's so easy to get trapped in there. And so you get trapped in these identity questions and that becomes paralysis.
Yeah.
You know?
So, yeah. So I think that, and then approval idolatry, I think is always like, you know, I want to be liked.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of how I like to be an encourager. I want to be a good friend. I want to, you know, the things that I feel are passions that God has given me. Yeah. Can also be like weaknesses as well, because like then I desire that attention and I desire, you know, people to care. Or I overthink what they think. And then you realize no one's thinking about you because they're all thinking about themselves.
Yeah, yes, seriously. I think I can relate to that as well. I think that those were mine too as well, same thing. And I think with me, it's not like I don't really care what that guy thinks. Yeah. You know, it's like I don't want to do something that's going to upset Gina, going to upset my kids, going to upset my parents. It's more like that stuff, you know? You know, I remember a couple of years ago when we were praying about going to Greece, that's what I was really wrestling with. Like, well, you know, my parents just moved down here. Can you imagine if they just moved down here and then we moved? Mm-hmm. And where it should be, if the Lord wants you to go, you got to go. You know what I mean? But it's really hard to think that way. Instead, our default is to say, well, you know, but there's wisdom in, and then we start justifying.
Which I think goes to that third point of...
Yeah, seek wisdom. Pray.
But thinking you know more than God.
Oh, yes. That's
it's like if God has opened this door, you know, God has opened a door for me to do X, Y, Z, And then I go, yeah, but people are going to think this about me, or,
Yeah.
I'm going to let these people down. And it's like, no, if God says to do it, you got to do it.
Well, and that's what I was reading this morning in my Bible time. Actually, I was started reading Matthew 1-4. I was really,
Bible time with Billy.
I sing that before I read in the morning.
That's good.
It's so weird that you know that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was really struck by was Joseph, Jesus, Peter, Andrew, Nathaniel. God would say something and they would obey immediately and at great cost. So, James and John, it says Jesus said, follow me. It says they left their father and the boat and they followed him.
Yeah.
Same thing with Peter and Nathaniel. But the one that really struck me was Joseph. It said after Jesus was born, it said God came to him in a dream and said, Herod's going to come kill the baby.
Yeah.
And it says Joseph got up in the middle of the night, left everything, and went to Egypt.
Yeah.
And I said to Gina, I would have been like, hey, honey, I just had this weird dream.
Yeah.
Let's sleep on it. And then tomorrow morning, let's bring it to the Lord in prayer. Maybe we'll pray about it for a week. You know what I mean? And Joseph is like, honey, we're going.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself, man, that's like immediate costly obedience. Leave all your stuff, go to a country that you don't speak the language. And I want to be obedient like that,
Yeah.
as opposed to Saul, who just is always justifying. What about you guys?
What are you thinking about?
What do you struggle with in terms of that? Any other thoughts on that?
No, it's just something I've been thinking about. I think about this a lot. I've probably talked about it on here before, but the idea of really being able to slow down and hear. I feel like Jesus was so unrushed.
Yeah, unhurried.
And it's like even Paul. Everything was just so like, all right, well, I'm just going to be here for a little bit. And then it was just like, you never get this pace of like rushed. And even like the Israelites wandering around in the desert for 40 years, it was like maybe they'd set up tent for a month. Maybe they'd set up tent for a day. And it's like they were just paying attention to what God was doing and they would follow. And I'd love to know what that
Even looks like?
to just live a life that was so deliberate and so on purpose and just slow and be like, all right, God told me to do this and I'm just going to do it. But I always feel like sometimes I'm looking at the Bible like it's the Da Vinci Code or something where I'm trying to figure out, God, like, what's he want me to do? Should I open this business or don't I? Should I do this? Everything's like,
Yeah.
and it's just like, I just wish I was just like, God's not saying anything. So I'm okay for the next month. And then God says, go to Lancaster and
Go to Shady Maples.
and get yourself some maple syrup. I was thinking Country Knives.
Country Knives? Is
Yeah.
that a store?
You don't know about Country Knives in Lancaster?
Nope.
Brother, we got to go on a trip.
I don't need to spend more money on knives.
Oh my gosh, we spent so much money on knives.
Well, I'll ask the Lord if I should go, and then I'll waver on my decision.
Yep, you'll cast lots.
Yeah.
Throw some dice.
So this is the thing, guys. To bring this back to Saul, he doesn't want to make a decision. He doesn't want to obey. He's got all these excuses. You have excuses too. You have excuses. I want to bring this back to identity. You have excuses you have an identity. You know who you are. You know what you're good at. You know that thing when you were a little kid, and you just wanted to be a fireman and help people. Like that thing that's deep within you that God has placed there. And now we talk ourselves out of it and around it for years and years and years until we wind up looking at our life and saying, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And it's because we've talked ourselves out of it. We've abandoned our identity. We've feared people. We've feared consequences. We fear failure. We think we know better than God. So God says, I want you to do this. And you say, no, I don't think so. And I want you to really come back to that. Like we said at the end of yesterday's sermon, what is God telling you to do? And why aren't you doing it? Identify the obstacle and tear it down. All right? And so think about that. And if you need accountability, text us. Let us know.
Yeah. How are we going to land this plane?
We're going to look forward.
Look forward. All right, look forward. What are we looking forward to?
Lots of announcements.
Well, let's see.
Baptism's coming up. Not too
Baptism's
late.
coming up. So remember, this Wednesday night we have Praying Through the Psalms with Mr. Victor Davis.
That's
and
right.
Mr. Ryan Pittman.
That's right.
So
We have Praying Through the Psalms this Wednesday. We have
2 Mile is
2 Mile at the end of the month. There's a lot of stuff, guys. The bottom line is that you need to grab the lyric sheet. You need to go on the website. You need to download the app so that you can be completely in the loop on all the stuff that's going on. Child dedications, baptism. We have end of the month, the beginning of June service at 2 Mile. We have the hub coming up soon. So many things.
Men's retreat.
Okay? Men's retreat.
Yeah. The Church Center app, too. I hate having like notifications and things going off on my phone all day. That kind of drives me nuts. But the Church Center app really is a good way to stay connected. So like for me, just like at night, you know, and if I'm after dinner just kind of hanging out, I'll go on and just kind of scroll and see. So if you don't want to, if that annoys you, having
You just turn them off.
just turn the notifications off and just go on at night and, you know, kind of look at 3 or 4 and you know what's going on in the church. But it is
Get her
really
done.
helpful.
Yeah. Guys, we hope that this has been beneficial to you, just hearing us talk through some of these things. Really think about your identity. I think that's an important thing. And if you are interested in that book that we mentioned, I think it's called Living Fearless by Jamie Winship.
Yeah.
You know, give it a read.
Give it a look. See, it's free on Hoopla.
There you go. Free on Hoopla. Can't beat that price.
Can't beat that price. If you don't know what Hoopla is,
Get
go
a
to
library card.
Go to your library and they'll show you.
All right. Have a good week.
Have a great week.
Have a fantastic week.
Have muy caliente el week.
A very hot week.
Kind of humid today.
Muy spicy.